It has been used as a sign of purity and of rebirth and depicted for centuries in the familiar fleur-de-lis. The lily is a flower of great renown and beauty. We'll show you some of the countless varieties of lilies grown here and tell you how to raise them and make them thrive. Straight ahead on Great Gardening.
If you look, you actually see the growth for next year.
This is a plant that's been infected with early blight.
I can feed a lot of people.
I always want to use a garden fork.
You just wrap it.
Take a look at the environment, try to work with your environment.
Hello, I'm Pamela Fish. On this edition of Great Gardening, we attempt to gild the lily. And to help us with that, our resident experts, Tom Casper, the City of Duluth gardener and Parks Maintenance Supervisor, and Bob Olin, State and County Educator and Horticulturist. Welcome back, gentlemen.
Great to be here.
And before we talk about the lily, though, I want to ask you what's going on out there this week. It's been a little chilly, but you're seeing things pop up.
Yeah, it's been a really great time to be dividing some of those early emerging perennials. I've been working in my yard getting ready for some stuff, so I've been dividing plants, and really a lot of fun after this long winter to get out and working in the garden again. So
Nice combination of some moisture as well as now warming temperatures. This next week looks great. If anyone did start early with that salad garden, remember, spinach will come up, but it's very frost sensitive. We got some cold nights coming up here. Make sure you get that covered, and then we should be pretty good shape coming into next week.
All right, sounds good. Well, we also want to introduce tonight's phone volunteers who are on hand to answer your immediate garden questions and concerns. They are St. Louis County Master Gardeners, and you can call them right now at 218-788-2844 or call toll-free 877-307-8762. Well, this week, our Great Gardening tip includes a number of tips about growing lilies, along with a look at some gorgeous examples.
Hi, I'm Deb Lightnin, and I'm one of the lily ladies in Lakeside in Duluth. And this is my mom, Donna. And together we started a business 4 years ago of selling lilies, and because we love them and they're so pretty. And we generally plant about 750 lilies a season. We try to keep it to that. Sometimes
she gets a little carried away at
times. We try to get about between 75 and 80 varieties. Well, the most important thing about lilies is good drainage. That is the most important. And sunshine. And they need about 6 hours of sun. Doesn't matter if it's morning or afternoon, just enough sun for them. We probably have maybe 2/3 black dirt, probably the other third is peat moss and compost. Just real, not clay, please. Lilies don't like clay. When I plant in the fall, I just put a little bulb food or bone meal, whatever, and just to give it a little boost, and rough up the soil and plant the bulb, and that's a good time to plant in the fall. I do fertilize in the spring too. Actually, I fertilize all along. People ask me how you get them so big, but I really don't fertilize them a lot. I just, every couple of weeks. We generally really don't mulch a lot because I plant a little deeper than, I plant about 6-8 inches down sometimes. So we're zone probably 4 down by the lake. Maybe the hill is 3, but these are all 3 and 4. And the LAs and Asiatics are more like 2, so they're super hardy. First it's Asiatics, and then it's LAs, and then Oriental trumpets, and then the species lilies. This is called an LA lily, and it's short for Longiflorum asiatic, and what it is a combination of those 2 plants, which are both very hardy and both easy to grow, and there are just literally hundreds of different kinds, and they keep coming up with different ones every year. They don't have a lot of smell, but some of them have kind of a fruity smell, which is nice, pleasant, and they bloom early, so you get lilies earlier. What's flowering now is the OTs and the Orientals. There's so many different kinds now. This one's an oriental, and this one is too. Many, many different colors. Everything you'd ever want. Orientals have the fragrance along with the OTs. You'd notice that right away. And time of year is basically it. And they are a different look to them too. Trumpets are trumpet shaped, you know, like this one is more of a, you know, a trumpet shape. This is an OT. Whereas like this one here would be an oriental. Oops, rain soaked. That is more recurved. And then the Asiatics are very hardy. This one likes to propagate itself, and I think I planted 3 in my garden against the greenhouse, and I think for every 3 I planted, I got 9. Whenever one is done flowering, I take it off. Well, you can let it go like this. I don't, because I want the bulbs to get the energy, not them making this seed pod. And then the energy goes back into the bulb. Like all this feeds the plant. I think it's a good thing to do, just if you want the plants to multiply quicker. And if you do want to cut the lily and bring it inside, don't cut, you know, down here. Leave at least 2/3 of the stem. And that'll also, because that's the food, that will help it grow also. This one is Nymph, it's an OT. Well, this one is a double oriental called Miss Lucy. And it's just really full, and it doesn't have the stamens like other lilies, so it kind of weathers a storm a little easier. Doesn't make it all rusty, you know, like some of them get, the white ones. It's just very pretty, and it seems to grow really well. This one's probably been flowering for almost 3 weeks. This one's called Extravaganza, the polka dotted one. And this one here is so pretty. The red one is called Indiana. It's an oriental. The one in front of it is another double oriental called Sweet Rosie. I've noticed that when it does start to fade, instead of the whole thing going all at once, the back petals are what fades first. So if you're really wanting it to look really nice for a long, long time, you can just peel off those back petals, and then it looks new again.
Well, certainly some gorgeous flowers there, and a lot of good information on how to take care of them.
Great information on how anybody can grow lilies with just a little bit of patience and the right kind of soil. The one thing that they didn't mention that people really need to keep in mind if they're going to grow just about any kind of lily is deer control.
Yeah.
So they want to make sure that they have some form of deer control, or they're going to munch those down.
Now, Deb talked about planting them with allium. Have you found that that works?
Well, allium is a natural detractant for deer, but
except the deer who like onions.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing to keep in mind is allium are done blooming by the time the lilies are blooming.
Okay.
So it's probably not going to be real effective. So I would suggest some other form of protection for deer rather than allium. So.
Okay. Well, we're going to get right to questions because we have questions coming in, and we have kind of a pile accumulating from previous shows and from the home show. So Jody in Two Harbors wants to know, can you grow potatoes in partial shade?
You know, you definitely can. The more sun you can get, the larger the tubers and the greater your yield. But you can definitely grow them, and I would pay attention to everything else. Plenty of potassium, plenty of nitrogen, and as much sun as you can get.
Okay. Bill from Trigo says, can you eat basswood leaves? Are they toxic?
Well, they're not toxic, but they're not very tasty.
Not very
So,
appetizing. I would say no to that
There's
one.
better things in the garden to eat besides your basswood leaves. So.
Okay. Elizabeth from Carlton wants to know how to get rid of lily of the valley. We've heard that one before, and it certainly is invasive, but they're
Right.
pretty. They
well,
smell good.
and they're very shallow rooted. So if
Yeah.
they can go in, if they're working on renovating a garden, just take off that top 6 inches of soil, and they're going to get all of those roots out. You can also treat for them, but it's just as easy to dig for them. So.
I'd agree. In this case, shovel will do the job pretty well for you. Just go after them, and if they resprout, take them out again.
All right. Julie from the town of Poplar wants to know what kind of winterberry bush is recommended for this area.
Well, there's actually quite a few. The standard winterberry is beautiful, or snowberry. There's also a brand new one that we just featured last week on the Garden Extravaganza up at Hermantown High School, and it's called coral berry. And instead of having the white berries, it has a coral or pink colored berry that persists through the winter. So.
And there are a lot of really new and exciting introductions, aren't there, Tom?
Yeah.
Here's an apple question. Bob from Lakeside has a 5-year-old Honeycrisp tree. Last year, lots of apples, but black spots throughout the apple flesh. He sprayed the trees 8 times with an all-purpose fruit spray. So what went wrong?
Well, he should have sprayed it a 9th time. No, you know, it's kind of interesting. This is the classic apple maggot, or what they call railroad maggot, and he may not have started his spray program early enough. That flies out very early. You really need to start the 1st of July. If I can offer one other thing, consider bagging the fruit, the high-quality dessert fruit, and people think that's a lot of effort by placing just a small sandwich bag over them. But when you consider the amount of effort that goes into a spray program and the amount of pesticides and so forth, sometimes just bagging them, sandwich bags, slip the bottom corner of the bag so that the water drains out, and bag them just as the apples are forming. And do as many of as you think you may consume as a highly desirable dessert quality fruit.
Okay.
The other thing maybe to keep in mind too is, as you're looking for that time, is really look for when that apple's about the size of a dime. When you say, Bob, when it's really just forming is probably the perfect time to start.
All right. Karen in Proctor says, is it too early to fertilize blueberry, hardy roses, other things?
No, I really think my rule of thumb is as you're breaking bud so the plant can actually use the fertility, then you can go ahead. And we're definitely at that point right now. I'd start an early fertilizer program.
At the Rose Garden, we are starting to fertilize our shrub roses next week. So really, this is the perfect time to do it. So.
Teresa from Finland wants to know, she planted zucchini and squash last year, but the stems rotted. What happened there?
Can be a couple things. We can have vine borer that causes the problem. We can also have some calcium deficiencies that cause the problem. She wants to investigate a little bit farther this year. First, I would be sure that she has some more calcium in the soil. Use calcium nitrate as a fertilizer, or if the pH isn't too high, she could use even a little bit of lime there.
Okay. Carolyn from Cromwell wonders how to get rid of thistles in her garden. Wear good strong gloves.
Yes, very, very strong gloves. Even they'll just pierce right through leather. You can pull them out. It's difficult, but you can pull them out. That's a very effective if you can get the root system out. And really, while they're very young. Now, if you get them a long ways along, you can cut them and try to treat the base of the plant. It's going to resprout, and then you treat again, and you should be able to kill them.
Okay, Brenda from Ely has a fir tree. The needles all fell off. She cut the branches. What went wrong? Will it grow back?
Wow.
Good question.
Doesn't sound very attractive, does it?
No.
Sounds like starting over might be the advice. So could be a variety of things.
If it's a balsam fir, and we'd like to know what time of year this actually occurred,
Sure.
but there can be any number of insect pests that can also attack them and cause problems. Spruce budworm is a classic that really attacks more balsam fir than it does spruce. So she wants to watch for that as the buds are beginning to unfold. And if there's enough bud material, it can come back. You're going to lose probably some of the lower branches, but see what evolves as we move through the spring here.
Okay.
And the other thing to keep in mind is, too, depending on the location, we're seeing some drought damage, too, from into some of our evergreens that desiccated over the winter because of lack of moisture going into the fall and throughout the winter. So she may be seeing some of that result as well.
Okay. Sue from Midway, what kind of garlic should I plant? When should that be planted?
Ooh, interesting.
We are going to have
Bob's the garlic
we are going to have a segment on garlic coming up in a couple weeks.
As a rule of thumb, if she stays with the hard necks, those are the ones that form the nice scape. They're good and hardy. You can't go too far wrong. There's some just really nice varieties there. She'll have plenty of time to watch our program and to investigate that because the best time to really plant garlic is in the fall.
Right.
And you can plant it well into the fall. I planted some mid-November, and it's doing beautifully right now. You just have to make sure that you got some straw ready, and so you can mulch it. But much better in the fall than in the spring.
One more quick one, because I'm getting the sign to go to our video. Do I need to prune my strawberry vanilla hydrangeas?
No. Well, you should really wait and see.
Okay.
They generally will grow or live out on the old wood. So she really wants to wait and see where the buds develop and form, and then do some pruning. She may have a little tip dieback, prune that off after the buds have opened, but do nothing right now until that happens.
All
Don't
right.
you agree, Tom? That's one of the new varieties. It's absolutely fantastic.
It's beautiful.
And changing our landscape
We had
as
a
well.
picture of that last week, and it was gorgeous. Okay, more timely garden questions to come. But right now, we want to take you on a tour to a Duluth garden where a different kind of lily, the daylily, is grown in beautiful abundance.
My name is Kathy Clark. We are in my front yard in the Kenwood neighborhood off of Arrowhead. and welcome to my garden. Some things that are, I think, especially cool, and it's a little wet in here, but this foxglove, I haven't been able to get it to grow before, and I don't know if this was the right spot, so I'm hoping it puts out all kinds of little babies. The garden is not planned, it's kind of grown like topsy. It's oh, this is an interesting plant. Let's see if it will work here. So there's not a lot of rhyme or reason to the garden. It's mostly perennials, just because that's easier to take care of. A lot of daylilies. There's pretty much a succession of bloom the whole year, the whole season. I like ferns. This maidenhair fern is just gorgeous. I think this is the tatting fern, yeah. Yeah, isn't it cool? Oh, it's some kind of a campanula. And they're really pretty little flowers. It just kind of has spread. It's fun to plant stuff that you just hope will work. You don't always know if it will or not. A lot of the daylilies, which the deer unfortunately have seemed to like when they're not supposed to. There's one particular one back over here that's really, really gorgeous, so I'll have to show you that one. Some of them are labeled. Some of them, the labels have gotten buried in the foliage and the blooms. You know, the Stella D'Oro is out in the front. I mean, that started with 2 little bunches, and I kept dividing and dividing, and I know a lot of people said that, oh, they're such a yucky kind of orange color, but I mean, they've been so wonderful. The one that I wanted to show you, I think we saw the tag, is called Darling Anita, and it's really beautiful. I suppose, I don't know, 60 maybe? There's a lot of them. In the backyard especially, it's just kind of solid daylilies. And now we're coming into the backyard. This is a whole nother area of daylilies. The original garden was this one back here, which is really wet. So trying to find what would grow in it has been difficult. So this whole garden is pretty much daylilies. We weren't getting any flooding, but the backyard was getting really, really soggy. And so he had people dig stuff up, and they were going to dig a big trench down here. And I said, well, if you're going to dig a trench, let's turn it into a dry creek bed. And then there's a little bridge here that goes over this creek bed. There's just a path back here that goes into the woods. More daylilies back here, and more opportunities to plant daylilies too. You know, any place I find a daylily that's a little different. If I like ones with eyes, you know, a central portion that's different than the outer petals, and ones with the really ruffly shark's tooth edge. Really like those too. A lot of garden. I don't know what I'm going to do as I get older. To find somebody who will take over.
All right, well, those indeed are gorgeous as well. As a rule, they're easier to grow than the other types of lilies that we saw in the earlier piece?
Yes, yeah, daylilies are generally very easy to grow. There are several upsides to it. One of them, again, is the ease of growth, few disease or insect problems. The difference, one of the downsides between lilies and daylilies is daylilies bloom for a day or 2 at the most, thus the name, whereas lilies will bloom for weeks and weeks. But easy to grow and beautiful colors that we just saw. Wow.
And you know, we can have some deer issues with them when they're just emerging, but they're so tough and they're so vigorous that just doesn't seem to bother them.
No, they'll grow out of it.
Right.
Well, thanks again to Kathy for that tour. That was a lot of fun. Time now for some more questions, and we're going to start with Leo in Hermantown, who says, what weeds can I use preen on in my vegetable garden, and can I put it in the walk rows between the veggies?
Okay, she has to be very careful and read that label, because preen is a pre-emerge herbicide, and it isn't labeled for all crops, but many of them, such as carrots, tomatoes, the onion family, are labeled, but others, such as beets, are not. So she's really going to have to be very, very careful when she looks at the label. The other thing people should be aware of is that a name brand such as preen can sometimes have different active ingredients. And that can sometimes change because that's just your commercial name that's on there. You want to look at the active ingredient. In this case in particular, you want to be very careful about reading the label, and it will list the vegetables where it can in fact be used.
Okay.
And again, pre-emerge, so it has to go on in mid to early May to be effective. It only will control the annual crops.
Okay. And Tom, you were saying that people tend to use that in their perennial flower beds as well.
Right, perennials or even in annual plantings. Because you're planting already live material, it will be okay with preen around it. So you, again, being very careful where you're seeding or using it in that kind of application. But in existing gardens or annual plantings, you can use it with great success.
Okay. Don from Duluth says he purchased blackberry plants as hardy here. They grew well, but no berries.
Yeah, that's the issue. We really want to get berries. We want to get those flower buds
kind of
through.
important,
So
isn't it,
it's
Bob?
kind of important. It's just like we can all get a strawberry plant through the winter without covering, but we don't always get fruit.
Right.
So I would say keep trying, and it may depend on the winter and the location and so forth.
Okay. Barb from Kenwood says, what are the best herbs to plant for this area?
Oh, that's unlimited. They're just about anything you can grow here as an annual. Many of them you can grow as perennials. So really, what her preference is and what she's able to find and use and utilize in her cooking is really up to her. So
Yeah, I think there's so many options. I mean, basil's the obvious one where we've got all kinds of different varieties. And you're right, Tom. This is where actually a little bit of winter protection to get into some of the perennial herbs that a lot of people like to grow, the rosemaries and so forth, that really do better over time. Some kind of winter protection. People should consider more of that for their perennial herbs as well.
Okay. Jessica from Duluth, how do you get rid of comfrey?
Well, that's a biennial, isn't it? So that could be interesting. Go
So
ahead, Tom.
if you can deal with it in its first year and get it out of the garden before it goes to seed, is a very effective time to do it. Once it goes to seed, then it's spreading and you've got bigger problems. So really dealing with it when it's in its rosette stage, digging it out is easy enough if you get it early. So.
All right. Gary from Little Fork has green onions, Kelsey, Spanish, etc. Tops get so tall that the wind blows them over. Can I cut the tops off, or will that stop the growth?
You know, it's not advisable. You want to let them naturally die back, or die has, we call that. You have a pretty good idea that the onion is mature. If he's got this real weak growth, I'd be a little careful about the amount of nitrogen that he's using. If he's using manure or some other synthetic nitrogen source, he may be pushing them along just a little too much there.
Okay.
Onions really want more phosphorus and potassium relative to the amount of nitrogen that's being used.
All right. Linda from Babbitt has a bleeding heart that had grown 6 inches and then froze. Should I cut it off? Will it grow back?
It should grow back. She'll want to clean that stuff up, and folks, of course, are experiencing that with this crazy sort of spring we've had so far.
Yeah.
So clean that up. It should sprout new growth on it and be just fine.
Tom, we even saw with that real cold spell we had, warm in March, and then we had those 16, 17, 18 degree days in mid-April there. Saw some damage and burn on rhubarb as well. I haven't seen that before. So,
And should the rhubarb be cut back as well?
just let it go. I just let it go. You're gonna get a number of new leaves and stalks that are going to emerge from the roots. So we're going to be okay on all of these.
Okay. Arvid in Hayward, this says the soil in her blueberry patch is pH 5.8. How do I lower that?
That's not too bad for starters. So I think if you're going to lower it, you're going to lower it carefully, and you might want to use, she may be able to lower it just with the preferred fertilizer, ammonium sulfate, or a ground sulfur that you bleed through the top. You don't have to dig anything up, and that'll bring it down another notch or so, and that ought to be adequate.
Okay. Time for one more maybe. Another blueberry question. Oh no, Jean from Cotton talks about blueberries in sphagnum moss and how should I plant them? How deep a hole?
Okay, you want to be a little bit...
Go ahead.
Okay, I kind of assume I know what she's talking
Okay,
about
good.
there. Sphagnum moss, yeah, of course, you're not going to use the green sphagnum. You're going to be using a milled sphagnum, Canadian sphagnum, peat moss for the acidity. She doesn't want those to go in too deep. They have a very shallow root, and you want probably a 50% mineral soil, 50% acid sphagnum, peat moss combination in the hole for you, and that'll do it.
All right, great. Well, lots of good information and answers. And we're going to move on now, though, and we'll have a little bit of time for questions and answers coming up later on. But right now, we want to take a look at some of the photos submitted by area gardeners. So here's tonight's Grow and Show. From the gardens of Ken and Nan on Congdon Boulevard in Duluth, the vegetables and raspberries share space beneath grapes on the arbor. A close encounter reveals the veins in the petals of the blue monkshood. while nearby a delicate lily lolls in various stages of bloom. The pink lady lily stands taller in the summer sun, and this stargazer lily steals the show. Ken caught a butterfly at rest on the sedum, the purple coneflower still vibrant as its petals start to wither. The burst of bloom from the red-twigged dogwood stands in contrast to its deep green foliage, as does the fruit of this baneberry nestled in ferns. Do you have glories from the garden to share? If so, please send them to us at greatgardening@wdse.org, or if you can't email, send them to 632 Niagara Court, Duluth, Minnesota 55811. And remember, you can send us your photos anytime, and those we receive can also be found in the photo galleries on our website at wdse.org. Couple of things we want to tell you about coming up, and one is the plant sale.
Right, the Duluth Garden Flower Society's plant sale is coming up in 4 weeks. This is one of the plants that folks will find there. That's Empress Wu. That is the biggest hosta on the market. 4 feet by 4 feet.
How much are we going to pay for that?
You'll have to come and find out.
Okay.
But a
All right.
beautiful
And the
opportunity.
sale again is?
May 26th in the Rose Garden parking lot. Starts sharp at 8 o'clock.
Yeah, and we'll talk about that again.
Okay.
But another thing we want to tell you about, and it's an event going on all summer. It's sponsored by the South St. Louis County Soil and Water Conservation District, and it's called Forest in Focus. It's a photo contest of native trees and shrubs. You can find all the details on their website, also a link from our website. So just click on the Great Gardening Calendar sidebar for information on that and other gardening-related events going on around the area. Wow, that went fast. That's all the time that we have right now. But we want to thank our phone volunteers and our experts, of course, and all who called in. And from all of us here, thanks for watching and enjoy the garden.